Hi, guys. Oh my gosh. Hi, guys. What is up? My name is Rachel Velasco, and welcome back to my podcast, Your Hot Girlfriend. Today's episode is just a love story, and I'm just going to dive right in. I'm not going to tell you guys about my life. I'm not going to tell you guys what I've been up to recently. I don't want to talk about myself in the sense that, obviously this podcast is about me, but I don't want to talk about myself in the sense that this is everything going on in my life. I just want to talk about this guy that isn't even in my life anymore that I used to have a lot of love for. And it's really strange and it's really weird because I don't know if it's something going on with the super moon or I wish I knew why I'm thinking about him so much. Cause spoiler alert, before we dive into this cute little story, cause one thing I will say is on this podcast, right? It's very clear that I see people. It's very clear that I catch feelings for people, but I've never really gone into details front of the story to the back of the story and just been hey, you guys, I met this person. This is how we met. This is what happened. This is how I started catching feelings for them. This is how it ended. And I guess the main reason for that mostly is firstly, I don't like talking bad about people, and I don't like telling stories that make a certain person, I don't know, feel like they can't respond to it in a sense. And I don't know, I just feel like every person that I have a personal relationship with, whether I whether we're in each other's lives or not, I would never want to say something to depict someone in a negative light. And so I guess before we get into it, this story is kind of weird because I wouldn't say we ended on bad terms because we definitely didn't, but the entire story of this it just has a sad ending. It's not a feel good story. And it's crazy because, like I said, lately I've been thinking about this guy every single day and I don't know why. And it's not even in the sense oh, I have to see him again, or oh, I really hope we one day rekindle our friendship. To be honest, this sounds so sad to say out loud, to be oh, I at one point in my life I had so much love for this person and now we're never going to see each other again. And obviously never say never, but realistically, I will probably never see this person a day in my life ever again. And I know that kind of sounds almost morbid in a sense, or just really sad. It doesn't make me sad. I'm not sad that I'll never see him again. I don't want to talk to him. I don't have anything to say to him. I've just been thinking about him so much that I was I feel like this would be a cute podcast topic. um I don't even know how to talk about it or tell the story, and I think one of the things that's ironic about the situation is back when I first met this guy, I thought that I would remember every single detail of every single thing we did until the day I died. And I thought that I would just have to I thought I'd never forget him. And it's so weird because even now I struggle to remember him in the sense that even though I've been thinking about him so much and I truly hope he's doing amazing, I don't remember what it feels like to kiss him. And I don't care about not that I don't care because I obviously do, but I don't care to ever see him. um I don't know. I don't know how the story really begins, and that's I guess what I'm trying to say when I said I don't care. It's hard for me to even remember exactly how everything went down, tooth and needle detail, because it happened so long ago and it's genuinely something that I'm so over. And that's why reminiscing on the whole thing is just strange. I'm really trying to figure out if it has a deeper meaning to some other psychological issue that I might have, or I'm trying to actually really deep dive into my heart to be why is this guy on my mind every day. But basically, I don't know. I was never in love with him, but I would definitely say I had like so much love for this guy. I think he was like my first like puppy love experience, if that makes sense. Um, so basically, when I was in college, everybody, I say this every podcast, I went to DePaul. I went to DePaul, which is a college in Illinois. It's like 45, 50 minutes away from my suburb that I grew up in my entire life. And a lot of kids from my high school went to colleges at like Illinois State, U of I, out of state. Kids from my high school definitely did go to DePaul, but it wasn't like the most popular school. And my only close friend from college that like was going to like a city school in Chicago, like Loyola or DePaul or Columbia, was at the time from high school my friends Maggie and Marvel, who went to like a rival high school, but they were like my best high school friends in a sense. Anyways, um so in college I had like this, not like, I don't know. It was one of those things where everyone just kind of knew that me and my friend Marvel were two peas in a pod. If I went somewhere, Marvel would go. If Marvel went somewhere, I would be there. And we were an iconic duo for years. Like in high school, like I said, we were really close best friends. And then even like before that, we grew up together. We were childhood friends. And this was someone that was one of my best friends, someone that is still one of my best friends. And we just got along so well because Marvel was super creative and he had all these ideas and he had such an eye for like what looked good, and he was just so good at visuals in my opinion. And we were just like best friends. And um we did everything together, and we were kind of known for doing like really crazy things together. Like we were definitely inseparable, but we would do really spontaneous nonsense together for like college kids and for high school kids. And in college, we were going through, I think it was like Thanksgiving or Christmas break. It was definitely like fall, autumn. Marvel and I, which this isn't like uncommon for us, but also wasn't common because we definitely didn't fight all the time. But we were going through this block in our friendship, I guess, like an energy block almost. So we were still hanging out all the time and we were still doing things, but normally me and Marvel would like write poems together, take photos, or go to the city and go to concerts and like meet new people and just like really like deep dive into like the Chicago art scene and just things like that. We hadn't done that in a while, and it was because like our friendship, like I said, was just having this weird energy divide in it at the time. And so instead of doing like all these cool things, we would just like go to Chipotle together and sit in silence. And it was just one of those things. I don't know like what caused it. We were just like not we were still doing everything together, but we weren't like close. I didn't feel close to him. He didn't feel close to me. We were still best friends. Like I said, nothing had happened. It was just like we almost needed like some space. And long story short, one day Marvel called me and he was like, Rachel, I know we haven't done anything crazy together in a while, but let's go to Indiana because my friend guest listed me for a concert and it's in Indiana, and I want you to go because I want you to meet this friend, because if you meet him, you'll fall in love with him and therefore you guys have to meet. And I was not down for it. I didn't want to go to Indiana, but I was very aware of who Marvella's little friend was. And he was just like the world's most beautiful, hot guy, which I know sounds so cringe. But first thing of all, okay, I get dragged in my friend group. This drag has been going on since I was like 15, right? I have the reputation in my friend group for liking guys that are not conventionally attractive and, according to my friends, quote unquote, ugly. I don't even like that word, but ugly guys that are like funny, quote unquote. And they usually just end up treating me like shit anyways, but that's my type. I don't go for like the Timothy Chalamets and the Austin Butlers and the Jacob Elordis. Even though I think they're all super hot, I've never had that phase up until like very recently. of being like, I want to go hook up with the guy that's like beautiful. Like, I've never craved that. I've always been like, oh, I want to hook up with the guy that's really funny and has a dad bod and drinks too many beers and looks like he's 40. I don't know why that is, honestly. I think it's because definitely I do like a guy that is funny, but I don't understand why I can't find like a funny hot guy. I don't know. My friends always drag me. They're like, you have like really bad body dysmorphia and like a lot of psychological self-worth issues because the guys you hook up with are fucking ugly. Um, Anyways, so that was kind of like a running thing, even for me, like in high school. Like in high school, I never went for the guy that was like super popular and hot. Like that was just never me. But this guy that Marvell was friends with was so cute. Like I knew they were friends when obviously Marvell was my best friend. The day they met, I heard all about it. I saw his Instagram. I was like, this guy is so cute. So, long story short, Marvell met this guy a few months back in Chicago when he was on tour because the boy was a tour photographer for this really niche artist that had kind of like a cult following, like a small cult following. And Marvell was at the time huge into photography. He loved photography. He wanted to be a photographer. And like I said, Marvell was just like always such a like visual, aesthetic, like talented kind of a guy, you know? And so they became friends through the photography scene. They met at a concert. They bonded over like visuals. They became friends. And I was like, I'm not down to go to Indiana with Marvell, but like that guy is really hot. Like, why not? Like, YOLO, let's go. So I pick up Marvell. We drive to Indiana, which isn't like, it wasn't like deep in Indiana, but it's like, 2 hours maybe. And we are going to this show that was for, the boy was taking photos for. I feel like I need to come up with like a nickname for him because I can't just be like the boy. Like, firstly, he wasn't like a boy. He was like a grown ass man technically, but we were just so young at the time. Like, this is like freshman year of college, right? And so Marvell introduces us, and I was so nervous to meet him, right? Because, like I said, this is freshman year of college, guys. So this is like pre-filler, everything how I look now, Rachel. Like, I was in college, I was living in the Midwest. I had no sense of style, terrible sense of style. I couldn't dress to save my life. I was like on Accutane, kind of finishing Accutane. So I was like really insecure about my skin because it was like winter and it was really dry and like my skin would flake and then my foundation would look bad. And I just didn't feel very pretty at the time. Like, I wasn't the prettiest girl in high school. I didn't really like glow up until like kind of a little before COVID / during COVID. And so I was like pretty not insecure even, but I just didn't think that like me and this guy were gonna like get along. Like, Marvell was like, oh, I'm gonna introduce you and you're gonna fall in love with him and like it'll be great. I was like, Marvell, you're kind of crazy. Like, this boy is like literally stunning. Like, he's not gonna like talk to me, and like if he is, like it's gonna be because like we're best friends and you're introducing us, but it's not gonna be like what you think it is. Like, I thought Marvell was kind of delusional. Long story short, we get to this concert. The guy guest lists Marvell, gives Marvell a +1. I am the +1. And we walk in. And like I said, he was a tour photographer for like a smaller artist with like a cult following. So, when like an artist is niche, but they're smaller, but their fans are really into it. He was like a known guy for being like yada yada's tour photographer. And it was one of those things where that performer's fan base really respected him. I'm just going to call him Jake. I don't know. I feel like Jake is such a basic white boy name. I don't know why. I thought of Jake Ryan from Hannah Montana, so we're just going to go with it. So everybody at this niche concert that I would say the crowd is like 300 to 500 heads deep, being generous. But I also wouldn't say it was like a 50, 100 head show. Like 100 to 300, maybe 500 if we're generous. I'm a bad judge of people. There was like a balcony. I don't really know. But it had like a crowd for sure. And everyone there, mind you, the performing artist had like a mostly female, young audience. Every girl there was like, Jake, 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 because Jake was fucking beautiful. Like, he was like kind of like a mysterious, like, e-boy, like, you don't find them everywhere kind of a guy, like, hot. Like, he was so hot. You definitely don't find a guy that looks like that in like Downers Grove. Like, I was thinking about it today and I was kind of laughing because I was like, Jake was like the first guy I kissed that like had a tattoo. Mind you, he didn't have one tattoo. He had like a bunch and it was like all really hot. But he was like the first guy I ever kissed that like had a tattoo. You know what I mean? Like, it was a different vibe. Like, in the Midwest, like all of the guys are giving like Niall Horan, and Jake was like the like bad boy, like dark hair, tattoos, pale skin, like Timothy Chalamet kind of a vibe. And so every girl there was wanting to talk to him. Obviously, he's like walking around the venue like an insane man because he was like the tour photographer. And so he was just catching a lot of people's attention. And we got introduced and we just like instantly clicked. And it was so weird because I was so nervous to meet him. And the second we met, like, he just kept coming back to me being like, oh, Rachel, Rachel. Um, the concert starts and Jake is gone for like literally 15 minutes. Quote unquote, shoots the entire show and then walks up to me and Marvel. And this is like the era of like, it's 2017, okay? So like, this is the era of like SoundCloud, right? Like, that was kind of the aesthetic. Like, Fashion Nova was like just becoming a brand. Everyone was obsessed with like Little Xan. Like, that was like the moment, right? And so he walks up to me and Marvel in the concert and he's like, hey, like, let's just leave and get rap snacks. Because at the time, like, rap snacks were like hard to find and they were cool. And so we walk to this gas station in like the middle of nowhere, Indiana. It's freezing cold and we buy rap snacks and Jake is like outside smoking cigarettes. And we just start talking. And he like left the concert. Like, he didn't go to work that night. Like, he was eating rap snacks and smoking cigarettes. And I just was like obsessed with him. Like, the second we met, I was obsessed with him, as every girl is. Like, Marvel literally told me this would happen, as I knew it. We're driving home and Jake messages Marvel and goes, what is Rachel's Instagram? Mind you, he knew my Instagram, right? Like, me and Marvel were so attached at the hip. Like, we were one person at this time. He definitely knew who I was before he met me. And I don't say that in a pretentious sense. I'm saying this as like, me and Marvel were one person and he was friends with Marvel. Me and Marvel posted together every single day. Like, that day, Marvel was like tagging Jake in stories being like, oh, me and Jake are united. And then like the next story was like me and Marvel. You know what I mean? And so he asks Marvel for my Instagram. He gives it to me. He follows me. This was like culture shock for me. Like, I was a freshman in college. I had barely just lost my virginity. I was not good at talking to boys. I had never met a guy that was like, I wasn't going to say not from Illinois because that wasn't true, but I had never had a thing with a guy that was like artsy and stuff like that. Before that, I was hooking up with another tour photographer from Ireland. And before that, I was hooking up with a guy from LA. But they weren't Jake. They weren't him. They didn't have that like desire and like that mystery and like that whole lore. Like, I guess Jake was like the first Tumblr boy I had ever talked to. So I was going pretty sick in the head over it. Like, I was going from like TikTok Josh Richards core, like, I wear basketball shorts every day and I live in the Midwest, boys, to like Jake blowing a cigarette at me. Like I was down. I was obsessed. I loved Jake like the day we met. Jake follows me. I start freaking out. I'm like, oh my fucking God. Like, Jake followed me. Jake followed me. Like, I'm in love with him. Like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So I'm calling all my friends who, like, all of my college friends who, like, already heard all day and all night about how me and Jake had this, like, night at the concert and how we were, like, dancing together and then how he, like, left to hang out with me and how I was so obsessed with him. And I was like, you guys, like, do I message him? Do I message him? Like, this is before you could unsend a DM. Like, I was just like losing sleep over it. And before I even had the opportunity to, Jake messages Marvel and is like, yo, we are doing a tour stop in Illinois. And it was like in like a suburb. So it wasn't Chicago. And at the time, like I said, I was going to college in Chicago. So Jake was like, yo, how far is this from y'all? It was like 20 minutes from like Downers Grove where I grew up. He was like, if it's not too far, you and Rachel should like come see me this weekend. And so I'm freaking out because Marvel instantly calls me and he's like, Jake, we're seeing Jake this weekend. Like, start getting ready now, bitch. Like, I know you've like begged for this. Like, you're welcome. Like, let's just go. So later that week, I want to say like we saw him on like a Monday and the next concert was like a Saturday. So it was like 5-6 days in between. We go to visit Jake and he was like, you guys, I kind of like got in trouble in Indiana because he was like, I like didn't take pictures. He was like, so come before and then let's like all hang out after. So we get to the venue at like 2 or 3 o'clock and we're just like following Jake. And I know this is going to sound so cringe, but as a freshman in college, right? I thought this was like the epitome of like rock star girlfriend era. Like I was like so like, ew, like I don't know. It's so cringe, but I just was like so like, oh, like Jake really likes me. Like he invited me to the show, blah, blah, blah. We go to the show and then after the show, Jake was like, hey, like, you guys should like come on this tour bus. Like come on the tour bus with me. So we like go on the tour bus and then Jake is like, we're all getting fucked up. Like we're all drinking. And then me and Jake go to his like bunk on the tour bus and like we kiss. And like, bitch, like during this era of my life, like this was like my Super Bowl. I was like your name. Like I thought that I was like the bitch from every single fan fiction. Also, mind you, like this is like a niche backstory, but like a lot of people saw me and Marvel get on the tour bus with Jake and it caused outrage. Because, like, girls had, like, fan accounts for Jake. And they knew me because I grew up in Chicago and I go to concerts a lot. And I'm chronically outside. I grew up in Chicago my whole life. So, like, my ex-best friend was, like, obsessed with Jake. And then, like, saw me get on the tour bus with Jake. And it was, like, a whole Twitter fiasco. Like, it was 2017. You just had to be there. Anyways. So, me and Jake kiss. And I was just like, it was over for me. Me and Jake kissed, it was over for me. And that was the story of how I first met Jake. So we met. Later that week, I kissed him in the tour bus. I'm pretty sure I sucked his dick there too, but like I said, it was so long ago, I don't remember. I know, like, eventually we started hooking up, but I just can't remember if it was that night or not. Anyways, that was it. And I know Marvel at the time was kind of salty because me and Jake kind of became like really close. So like whenever we were hanging out, like it kind of went from like Marvel introducing me to Jake to like Marvel third wheeling me and Jake. And I know that kind of annoyed the fuck out of him. But he was a real ass bitch and was just like, honestly, like, this is fucking annoying, but go be happy with a boy. And so that was how me and Jake met. And then we became friends. And at the time I was in college, Jake graduated high school early. He was a tour photographer. So Jake was always on tour and he was in Chicago a lot and he was in LA a lot and he was in New York a lot. I was in college, but I was traveling a lot. So me and Jake became friends and we started to like hook up. Mind you, I want to like say like throughout me and Jake's entire like 2 years of being friends, maybe it was like a little longer, 2.5. We only had sex like 4 or 5 times. Like we weren't like hooking up that much. It was more of just like the thrill of it all. Like I met you when I was 19. Like we're just fucking around, like whatever, like 18, 19. Then um like Jake gets the opportunity to move to LA. And mind you, this is like a few 9, 10 months down the road. So, like I said, me and Jake keep hooking up. He keeps going on tour. Me and Marvel keep showing up. I just love Jake. And I'm not in love with Jake, but I love him. Like, I love Jake. I think he's so cool. And during those like months when Jake was on tour, Jake would tell me like, "Oh, like I'm going to start making music," or "Oh, I'm going to start doing this." And I loved it. Like again, this is like the era of peak SoundCloud, right? And so he would like always send me these like little SoundCloud songs he made that I thought were fire. And I haven't heard them in years, right? So I couldn't reassess and be like, "Oh, this is actually good." But at the time, I was like, "Oh my God, Jake, like this is the best song ever." Like I was so down bad, and I was just so like inspired by him, I guess, because like he had so many dreams and so many goals, and he worked so hard for them, and like he was at the best place you could be in life when you're 19 and you have like all these creative dreams. He was exactly where he should be. He was doing like, I thought he was so ahead of the curve, you know what I mean? Like just I as a friend, I was just like so happy for him and like so proud. And um long story short, like 9, 10 months later, he gets the opportunity to move to LA. Mind you, we would see each other like at least once every 6 weeks. And he moves to LA and he moves in with this guy that was kind of like a mentor of his. And that was kind of when I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I thought of it, but Jake moves to LA and things kind of start to change. Like he's kind of like doesn't give a fuck about photography anymore. I am happy because I'm just like, honestly, like you want to do music anyway now, like it doesn't really matter. But I guess like Jake moving to LA kind of was just like a big like transition, and like the Jake that I like knew, and like a new version of him, but it wasn't a bad version. It was just like a new like blossom or something. Like it was just like, "Oh, like you're like a little different now," but it's not really in like a bad way, and like I have nothing bad to say about it. So he moves to LA, and then like we just kept hooking up. Like I started coming to LA more and more, and Jake wanted to make music. So like we would always like go to the studio together, and like we would like get really fucked up, like get super drunk, hook up, do whatever, and then like hang out, like it was just like stereotypical like 2017 like kid shit, like underage drinking in a studio, like trying to create like SoundCloud beats. Like I don't know how else to describe it. And I was like really like puppy love down bad for Jake. Like Jake was just the doll. A few trips go by, like a few months pass, and it got to the point where it wasn't really fun anymore, and it wasn't really cute, and I didn't feel like your name anymore, and I didn't think that I was like this little rock star girlfriend like trailing around Jake. I felt really nervous because before anything, Jake was like my friend, and when I first met him, like I guess the reason that I was so obsessed with him is like, not to say people from my hometown don't have dreams or goals, because that's not an accurate statement and they do. But this was like the first guy I had a thing with that like I thought believed in something bigger than himself and dropped everything to pursue his goals. Like I almost had like such, I thought he was so brave, right? Because when I was in college, I didn't want to be there, but I sure as fuck wasn't going to do anything about it. I was scared. I thought that I needed to go to college to be anything. And I didn't have the bravery to take the steps that he took in life. And I loved that about him. Like, I loved that he was so passionate, and I loved that he was so successful. And I loved that if he got an idea and he wanted to try something, he was going to try it and he was going to do well at it and he was going to succeed. Like, as a friend, above all, that was the main thing I like loved about Jake. I was like, Jake is so badass because like if he wants to do something, he's going to do it. Like, I mean, it's not that it's like taboo, but like not every 19-year-old is like covered in tattoos going on like a nationwide tour every 3 months. Like, I was just so proud of him, and like I loved that drive. And like now, like moving to LA like over a year later, I was like, this is not cute anymore. Like, are you good? Like, I was just starting to get so concerned, but I kind of also felt like a really uncomfortable position because like I said, like me and Jake went from like friends to like hooking up, and like he always treated me like a friend, but like he kind of started to do like so much drugs and like would get so fucked up that I felt like he didn't even view me as a friend anymore. I felt like I was this motherfucker's groupie, and like he wasn't even like doing anything. Like, he quit his job as a tour photographer to like make music, which is like awesome. But then like every time we would go to the studio together, I was like, bro, like this is not even cute or funny anymore. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, it was just so concerning. And it wasn't like back in the day when like me and Jake had this like genuine friendship and I felt like I could be like, bro, like what the fuck? Like, are you good? Like, I felt like I felt like it would be so out of place for me to clock him on it because like he changed so much for like not the worst, but I just like didn't recognize this new version of him. And like I loved him obviously, but like I just like really missed like the old version of that friend, and like it wasn't the same vibe. So like I felt like it'd be so fucking out of pocket for me to say anything. So I said nothing. And it ended up getting worse. And I didn't know what to do because at the time I thought I was in love with him. You know what I mean? Like, I was 19. Like, when you're like 19 and you're like hooking up with a guy, like you think you're in love with like every single one of them. You know what I mean? So like I thought that Jake was like the love of my life and whatever. But I also knew that me and Jake were not going to get married. I was delusional for Jake, but I was never that delusional. And I always knew that like me and Jake were I knew that Jake was like a really important person in my life, but I also knew like it wasn't endgame. But I also thought like, oh, like in an ideal situation, like we would be like friends with each other forever. I am not drug phobic. I am not alcohol phobic. I've done drugs, I've drank, and I think it's one of those things that you have to do it with precaution and you have to like be so self-aware. There is such a deep responsibility that comes with doing drugs and drinking. Like, that's the thing people don't understand, and that's like a whole other side rant, but it's like alcohol is not a bad thing if you use it responsibly. If you're irresponsible and you're drinking, you can become like the world's most fucked up person. You can become the worst version of yourself. But if you're responsible with it, it affects everyone differently. It's something that if you're gonna do it, you owe it to not only yourself but greater society to make sure that that's something you could handle. And I was just like so overwhelmed by like all of these changes because it was like so hard because like I said, like obviously at the time I had feelings for him, but like all of that aside, it was like I was watching someone that was like almost like a muse for me and someone that I was so infatuated with and so interested in because he was so different than like my normal life. Like I said, at this time, I was still a college student. So most of the people that I saw every day were, you know, like other college students and on a very linear life path. I admired like everything about him, and like I was so inspired by the old version of him, and I was watching him like destroy everything that he like loved and worked so hard for. And it was so hard because I was like, did your dreams change, or like what is this? Like, do you still have like these goals that you had when we met? Because if you do, like, your actions aren't aligning with these goals, and like I'm your friend, so there's like nothing I can do about it. But it was just so hard to watch, and it was like honestly giving me a lot of anxiety because he would still be like, Rachel, let's go to the studio, and I was like, bro, like I don't want to like go to the studio with you and then like we both get like so fucked up and then like you achieve nothing. Like I want to go to the studio with you and I want you to make a really fire SoundCloud beat, and then I want to play it to my friends and be like, you guys, like I'm in love with Jake. Listen to this song he made at this studio with me. Do you guys think he has a crush on me? Like I didn't like this new version of him. But it was so hard because, like, he was trying so hard to convince me that that's what he wanted. And I don't know, maybe it was, I'm not Jake. So it just put me in this weird situation because I was like, I'm not you. And if this is what's making you happy, I don't want to have a comment on it. But I feel like it's not making you happy, so I want to stop it because I feel like you're self-destructing. But I don't know if you're self-destructing, so there's nothing I can do. So I would just, like, hang out with him and watch him make, like, the worst decisions ever. And I was co-making a lot of these bad decisions. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, like I was like drinking with him too, I was like doing drugs with him too. Like obviously I wasn't like drinking and driving or doing fucked up shit, but I wasn't like contributing to any of his productivity by any means. And it just got to be crazy. And then we didn't shortly after the last time I saw him, I came back to Chicago and college started, and we hadn't seen each other in a minute. Like, we were still friends, we were still cool, like, we still followed each other, but we hadn't seen each other for a minute. And I don't know how long it was, but it had been a minute. It is 2 days before my junior year of college trimester final. So it was my last final I was going to take before summer of senior year. And Jake had a show at like some really small venue in Chicago. I want to say it was like Shoe Buzz or Lincoln Hall or something, which is just like a small venue. And of course he invites me and Marvel, and of course we go. And we go, and I was so happy because Jake was there on tour and he was a photographer again. And it reminded me so much of the day I first met Jake when I was a freshman in college. But it was so weird because when I first met Jake, I thought I was in love with him, and I thought that it was like, oh, Jake, blah, blah, blah. I saw Jake and I was like, I love you so much. In my head, I didn't say this to him. I acted completely normal. I acted like nothing had happened. I like wrote a journal entry and I was like, I love Jake so much, but like I don't love him the way I used to. Like he's literally just a friend to me now. And like I feel nothing for him when I see him. And I'm really happy because he's on the right track. But I was just like starting to feel like so distant from Jake. Like I said, like I'm going into my senior year of college. At this point in my life, I'm convinced that I'm going to become a CPA. I think that that's my only life path. I think that that's the only thing that's going to happen for me. Jake is back on tour. I'm just like, this isn't aligning, but I still like love Jake, but it just felt like different. That night that I saw Jake, like we hooked up and we kissed and we did everything we always do. But there was no drinking, there was no drugs, and I literally felt like, again, like I was never in love with Jake, but every single time we would like fuck or kiss or do anything, like I would get like butterflies in my stomach. Like I would get like such a like weird sense of adrenaline, and I would be like, oh my God, like I'm kissing Jake. Like that time I kissed him, I literally just felt like he was like any other guy that I kissed in college at like a bar. Like, it didn't even, like, feel like him. Like, it was him, and, like, he was doing better than ever. But it just, like, was so different. And it was weird. And I wrote in my journal about it. And then 2 or 3 days later, the last night of my junior year of college final, I was out and I met a guy, and we had a 3.5, 4 year long, very toxic situationship. And I pretty much like cut Jake off because in my head, I was like so in love with this toxic situationship. Me and Jake didn't hang out anymore. We didn't see each other anymore. And after the pandemic, me and Jake started talking. I mean, we never stopped talking, but like we would slide up on each other's stories here and there, but we just like weren't close friends anymore, you know? Um, Jake DM'd me because I was in LA, and it was kind of during the weird transitional period where people weren't like traveling and things weren't open, but like you could go back and forth to places. Um, I was in LA and Jake was in LA, and he saw my story. And so mind you, when Jake started going on tour again, he was kind of still living in LA, and then he like moved home. And Jake is from like the East Coast. So Jake lived in LA for a bit, and then like that whole drug thing happened, and he like quit photography for music, and then he ended up moving back to Boston. But then while he was living in Boston, he became a tour photographer again, and that was the last time I saw him. And then COVID hit, and it was a little like during COVID, I guess. I was in LA because my toxic situationship lived here, and I was like interning for I had reasons for being here. And I was like interning for college and stuff like that. And Jake was here, and Jake DM'd me and was like, hey, like, let's get coffee. Like, let's hang out. Let's do something. I hadn't been in LA for so long, and there was like COVID, and there like wasn't much to do. Jake texts me one day and is like, yo, like, I'm going to get like a hotel in Studio City, and like we can like hang out there, and then like we can just like hang out as old friends. And I agreed to do it, but this was like the peak of me being like in love with someone else. And I was at his house. I was at the situationship's house. And I forgot that I made plans with Jake. And Jake starts blowing up my phone. It's like 1 a.m, right? Like I completely forgot about this plan. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Jake is blowing up my phone like a motherfucker. Me and my situationship, bad. We were having like a bad day as it was. Like we would get into like really big heated fights all the time. Him and I were in a heated fight. Jake was calling me. I was like, honestly, like I'm just gonna like leave and go see Jake because like Jake was like my old friend, and like I promised him I would do it, and I like wasn't expecting anything. So I go to this hotel in Studio City, and it wasn't even like, again, like, oh, like Jake booked a hotel because like we would never hang out. It was just like everything was closed due to COVID. Like we couldn't really meet up anywhere for drinks. We could have gotten coffee earlier in the day outside and like walked around or something. But I was interning. Like I was in college. Like I couldn't just like drop everything to do that. And we go to this hotel and we're watching movies, and it was like instantly like the same old thing, like getting drunk, let's have sex, let's get wasted, like let's just do all this crazy like unproductive bullshit. And I was like so sad because I was like, bro, the last time I saw you, you were literally like the old version of yourself. Like you finally got your life back together. You were on tour again. You had like a good job again. Like you were pursuing things that like used to be your dream. And now we're in like a fucking shitty hotel in Studio City in the middle of a pandemic, and you're just getting like unconsciously like wasted and like telling me that like you quit photography and you quit music, and how you're gonna just like move into your mom's basement and like all of this crazy shit. And like we both ended up getting like really drunk, and then he was telling me how like he met this girl and how he was like really into her, and like asking me for advice on the girl, which like wasn't like abnormal. I was like also asking him for advice on like my situationship at the time. And he basically starts telling me how like he's gonna like have this girl that like grew up in Pasadena her whole life drive him back to the East Coast, drive him back to Massachusetts, and they were gonna start dating, and then that would be it, and that he was gonna like pursue a career illegally selling weed on the East Coast. Because again, during the time, like, I don't know if weed was illegal or if it was just like still getting like decriminalized. I don't know the law in it, but where he lived on the East Coast, he was basically like, yo, I'm going to start distributing weed. So I'm going to buy the weed in California, distribute it on the East Coast, or whatever his plan was. I don't even fucking understand it. And then he was going to have this girl that he met in an Uber be the love of his life. And I thought that this was like nonsense because, like I said, like we were both drunk and I was like, this is just like nonsense, but like I can't keep dealing with this anymore. Like, this is someone that like I loved so much as like a friend, as a person, whatever. Like, I loved him. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, it was just too much going on. And so I was just like, okay. Like, I don't even know what to respond to that other than like, okay, question mark. And he did exactly that. And he threw away his life in LA and quit going on tour and moved into his mom's house with a girl he met out here. And that was it. He like blocked me because like he started to date that girl. And that didn't even offend me or do anything. I mean, to be honest, at the time it hurt. Even though I was like in love with someone else, like at the time it still hurt because I was like, oh, like I get it. Like, you have a girlfriend now and stuff, but like we used to be friends and like now you blocked me. Like, it was just like kind of weird. And it made me really sad, but I was like, well, what can you do? Like, the answer is nothing. And I really just like hoped like he would get it together, but I just knew he wouldn't. And then our lives changed and he was living at home, last I heard, and just kind of like was so under the radar. And my OnlyFans career started to take off and like the roles kind of switched. Like, now I was living in LA and now all of these things were happening for me, and I never thought about him since. Like, yeah, there would be like moments where like I would see like a mutual friend of ours or I would see this and that, but like he blocked me on Instagram, right? So like I'm not seeing anything he's up to, which ended up being nothing because he like literally just like stopped posting photography, stopped posting stories, like just stopped posting, point blank, period. And that was literally like the last time I saw him, like in a hotel in Studio City. We both got so fucked up. He told me he was moving home. We had a bunch of sex. And then that was the last time I saw him. And I never like, he didn't cross my mind a lot. Like I said, like I was in love with like someone else and like I didn't think about him too much. And then recently when I went home to Chicago, I like thought about him and I was like, that's weird. Like, why did I think of Jake? But then I was like, oh, like I probably thought about Jake 'cause like I'm in Chicago and like me and Jake would like always hang out in Chicago, and like me and Jake were like besties with Marval. Like we were all friends. Like, why wouldn't I think of Jake? Like, it's not that deep, like whatever. And then, like I said, I don't know if it's because of like the moon or like what's going on. Like I said, like I don't want to like be friends with him again. We're never going to see each other again unless his life takes like a complete 180. I'm still going to live in like a major city and I'm still going to do me and I'm still going to pursue my dreams. I don't think he's going to like switch his life up. I don't think I'm going to switch my life up. I don't think we have anything in common anymore. We're both completely different people. But it just like almost, I guess that's what bothers me actually now that I say it out loud, and I'm going to go on like a whole other side rant. That's what frustrates me is I'm just like, bro, when we met, you were statistically cooler than me. You had all these dreams and you weren't scared to chase them, and you had the sauce and you were fucking so creative and you were so cool and you had so much talent. Who the fuck is this? You're a waste of fucking talent. You're not pursuing your dreams. Last I heard, you're pursuing nothing, which, mind you, I could be all wrong. He could be working in an office and just pursuing the most average life that no one would ever hear of all time. But if that's what made him happy, I would be happy. But the Jake I knew wouldn't be happy doing this. So it just frustrates me. I'm like, why the fuck did you give up on life? Like, I'm so confused. Like, I guess from my perspective, I just see it as like such a waste of potential. I don't know what the point of this was. I don't. because I don't want to talk to him anymore. I don't want to be friends with him. I was never in love with him. Like I said at the time, I was like, oh, I'm so in love with Jake. I loved Jake. I still love Jake. I'll always love Jake. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, where the fuck do I find a girl like me who likes medium ugly douchebags? Where the fuck am I gonna find another Jake? Where the fuck am I gonna find another Timothy Chalamet? Sure isn't gonna be at the gas station. Like, obviously, I'm always gonna love Jake, right? Like, he was like my first puppy love. Like, we were such good friends. Like, why would I want someone that was like my bestie to suffer? Why would I want someone that was that close to my heart to go through anything but the best in life? After we ended, like I said, I didn't give a fuck. I wasn't worried about him. I wasn't like FBI researching Jake facts and news. Like, is Jake found dead in a ditch? No. I knew that he was a grown ass man. I knew that he was probably okay, higher than the sky, off God knows what in his mom's basement. I wasn't that concerned. And that's why, again, I don't know why I can't get him out of my mind, but I just can't. He's a really important character in my life. Like, I'm so, so grateful for him. I'm so grateful for all the memories we shared. How couldn't I be? Why would I? What was the beef? Like, we never fought. We never got into things. Like, we never fought once, actually. We never disagreed on anything. Why wouldn't I miss him? I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. I miss him, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I miss him. I don't know. I hope I meet another cute guy like Jake soon because he was really nice and he was sexy. And I will see you guys soon. Thank you for listening, Your Hot Girlfriend. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope every girl has a Jake era because you will never regret your Jake era. Bye.